It's the bye week, which means self-scout. So, where do the Packers stand right now? What do they do well? Where are they deficient? Where do they need to get better? We dig into all of it on today's show.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. The 6-3 Green Bay Packers. It would be easy to dwell on the Detroit Lions loss and act like this team is lost, that they are wandering in the wilderness hoping to find themselves. And the metaphor that I used on the X machine, Twitters, was that the 3-6 Packers through 9 games last year, they needed to do essentially a 180. The Packers need to course correct about 4 degrees. Now, anyone who has ever sailed or navigated knows 4 degrees, and the further you go in that direction, 4 degrees is a lot. You ever played golf? If your club face is off 4 degrees, that ball is not going where you want it. People acted like I was crazy for saying 4 degrees. No. This team needs to get better in some specific areas. But I think on the whole, this team is better than the perception of the home team fans. I think there are a lot of Packer fans out there who are feeling very doom and gloom about this team. And I don't think it's warranted. They are 8th in DVOA. So by defense adjusted value over average, which is a fancy way of saying how efficient are you relative to the opponents you have played, the Packers have been the 8th best team in the NFL so far this season. That seems right to me. Like that's right in the sweet spot. They have not played like a team I think they're capable of being, which is 1, 2, 3, somewhere in there. But they haven't played as well as the Chiefs. They haven't executed as well as the Lions. They haven't been as explosive as the Ravens, though, you look at the records and you go, okay, well, not that different. But we know qualitatively, it hasn't quite been to the standard. They played 3 teams that we think are going to be in the playoffs in the NFC. They've lost 3 of those games. Now, the Cardinals, they're leading the NFC West. They won that game handily. That win looks a lot better than it did at the time. The Texans are still finding themselves, but the expectation is still that they're going to cruise to the AFC South Division title, and that eventually they will be a force to be reckoned with in the AFC. But I do think it is widely accepted that they are a tier below Baltimore and Kansas City. They're in the Buffalo, Pittsburgh, it might just be Houston, LA, the Chargers, probably in that same tier. So I think it's a nice win, but it's not quite as nice as we thought it would have been preseason when they looked like they were going to be a top 10 offense, a top 10 defense, or at least that's what a lot of people said about them. You may recall, I never bought it. I never bought the hype. But they're also 13th on defense. And we're going to dig into each one individually, but the 13th on defense part, it seems a little surprising because at times you go, could they please just get a stop? At the end of the Jaguars game, you're like, can you please just get a stop? When they need, the Lions game was probably pretty much over after the Dontavian Wicks dropped touchdown. But when you just have to try and get one stop to get the ball back or to force the Lions to kick a long field goal, something like that, they couldn't do it. The Lions run out the clock. We know what happened with the Eagles. We know what happened with the Vikings. Those are close games where they had chances to win and just couldn't get it done. I'm not going to, but they also did get it done against the Rams, a win that looks, again, better in retrospect. And when we dig into the numbers, you'll see this is actually a very good run defense, even though it doesn't feel like it. It is, and the underlying metrics agree. It's the pass defense that's a little hollow because they're not great rushing the passer. They rely heavily on turnovers, and they have a bad success rate. Part of that, I think, can be chalked up to injuries. And this is a big theme right now. Get healthy. You heard yesterday from the rehab specialist for Jordan Love, for Jaden Reed, for Dontavian Wicks, a guy who works with these players to try and help them get to where they want to be. Next week, you're going to hear from a player who's been dealing with an injury. Evan Williams is going to join us on the show next week. Buried the lead a little bit, didn't I? What were we, 4 or 5 minutes into the show? 6 minutes into the show? But he's going to be on the show next week. Very excited about that. He's dealing with an injury. Jair Alexander's been dealing with injuries. Jordan Love has not played a healthy snap since the third quarter in Brazil. And even then, remember, we were wondering, is something wrong there? He slipped on that opening drive. Is there an injury, or was he just very cautious with the footing there? If this team gets healthy, a team that has not been healthy, that has been inconsistent, and still finds itself at 6-3, a top 10 team by DVOA, a top 10 offense, an above average defense. If I told you going into the season, this would be the 13th ranked defense by DVOA, you would do backflips. The defense is doing its job. Now, it's a little fool's goldy because of the turnovers, but they do stop the run well. They do have an extremely talented group of defensive backs. If we add the safeties, Jair Alexander, Javon Bullard, I think those guys have played really well. Keyshawn Nixon has played better than expected on the outside as a boundary corner. That's going to make up for the inconsistencies at linebacker and along the defensive front. And on offense, this team is too talented to not be better than they've been already. 8th in DVOA with 2.5 Malik Willis games. And the offense was pretty good in those Malik Willis games. A healthy Jordan Love offense, and this is going to be a top 5 offense, even if the defense regresses a little bit because they can't create turnovers at this same level. And by the way, no one is saying the same thing about the Detroit Lions, who are also creating turnovers at a high level. But if that falls off, if they 15th, 16th defense by DVOA, that is an enormous improvement over what it was last year when they took the future NFC division or conference champions to the brink. That's all it needs to be. Be 15th, be 16th, be 18th on defense, and have this offense get to where it can get when healthy. This team can still get to where it wants to get. Let's dig into the offense and how it can get there, what it's doing well, and where they might be struggling a little bit. That's next on Locked On Packers. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more just isn't in the cards. I like collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from Arena Club, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all the possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. Plus, the Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and an explanation of how your card was scored. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or a card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL with the code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Hims. Sometimes intimate moments can happen spontaneously. and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments so that you can make sure that you don't have a Jordan Love-like injury when you need to use that part of your body. Are we following this one? Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through Hims, you can get personalized ED treatments without stepping foot, much less in a doctor's office, outside your door. Start your free online visit at hims.com/lockedon. That's Hims, HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. Hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compound products, which are not approved or verified for health or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescription required on online consultation with healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. All right, let's dig into this offense. This offense is 8th in DVOA, 3rd in rushing, DVOA, 8th in passing. So they can do whatever they need to do. And I think that's borne out by what we've watched over the course of the season. The only reasons in games where they have not run the ball for big volume have been in games where they've been behind by game script. The Vikings game, for example, they were running it effectively on Minnesota. And I think the next time those two teams play, you will see Green Bay commit to the running game. The turnovers, the sloppy defense, they got behind and could not dig themselves out of the hole. And so in the second half, they could not run Josh Jacobs, even though they were running effectively. The same thing happened against the Lions. If Jordan Love never throws that pick six and it's 10-3 going into halftime, even if the Lions come down and score and make it 17-3, you still have the run game available to you. That's a 2-score football game. And Josh Jacobs was running. I mean, he was going to moonwalk to 100 yards in the first half if the Packers if they had 5 minutes, let's say, at the end of the first half instead of 2, and they try to go in a hurry up. They could have run a more normal offense. Now, that's not how it works, but that is what happened. The thing about this rushing offense is it is relying on big plays. They are 11th in EPA per rush, but 21st in success rate. So they are relying on explosive runs to be a good rushing offense overall. And that can be a little bit troublesome because they're not blocking it up great. And that's one of the reasons why, from a success rate standpoint, you're not seeing the productivity. They're 23rd in run block win rate. This is a below average run blocking offensive line, as it was last year. The good news is they're really good pass blocking. That's the trade-off. And so you're going to live. You're productive enough. 3rd in defense, 3rd in rushing DVOA. They are being productive in the run game. 15th in adjusted line yards. They're an average group moving the line of scrimmage, but Josh Jacobs has been good. I talked the other day about wanting to feed Josh Jacobs more. Emmanuel Wilson is a nice player. Chris Brooks is a nice player. Josh Jacobs needs 18, 20, 22 carries, and the other guys can combine for 6. Like, that's enough. Get Jaden Reed 2 carries, and that's enough. And this rushing offense will make everything easier for this passing offense, the play action game, and finding some answers in the short passing game. The play action short passing game. On 2nd and 1, they want to take off and throw these moon balls, which I get and love. But it's the kind of thing where you're like, okay, can we find some better answers here for if that's not there? That Jordan Love is not feeling like he's trying to have to go make a play. Now, him getting healthy is going to be a big part of that. If he can get healthy and move around a little bit better, that will make it easier for everything in all parts of the offense, frankly, but also in that play action game where he can roll out, try and find somebody. For the Jordan Love turnover issues, this is an offense that is 11th in EPA per play. They're 17th in success rate. So again, the whole offense requires explosive plays right now to be effective. But they're 10th in EPA per dropback and 15th in dropback success rate. So they're a slightly above average team moving the ball down to down, play to play, and they create explosives. Welcome to the Jordan Love experience. That's just what this team is. It's what they're always going to be. Now, if there's one place where I'm a little worried about this, is I think the Packers are going to start seeing a lot more man coverage. If we're doing the self-scout, if we're watching the tape, I watch that Lions game and I go, those are not great corners. They were able to be physical with these receivers, play man coverage, and the Packers did not have a lot of options because, among other things, Jordan Love couldn't move. When you are facing man coverage, that timing is going to be a little bit off. The rhythm is going to be a little bit off. You have to be able to hold, extend, move, and find guys. It's something that Aaron Rodgers has been terrific at. You cannot play man coverage against Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson because they will just torch you, not just with their legs, but creating outside of structure. Jordan Love can't do that right now. And when you look at these receivers, they're not creating separation. Christian Watson is the best receiver of the group, 30th in yards per route run against man coverage. 30th. That's a fine number. Romeo Doubs is 58th, Jaden Reed 67th, Dontavian Wicks 85th. That's not great. If you think 32 teams times 3 receivers, it's not great. It's not great, especially for Dontavian Wicks. This folds into my theory that the Packers need to lean into their best guys, their best 3, which is Watson, Doubs, and Reed right now. And then Tucker Kraft can do all of the, hey, it's a little dump off. It's that little play action slide. He's the outlet. I'd like to see them call some more plays for him. Dial some things up for him. I think that there's an opportunity there for Tucker Kraft to get a little bit more involved because I trust him to be in the right places. I trust him to make plays after the catch. I trust him to catch the ball even when he's a little bit covered. There's more out there for them in that regard. And so when you look at the way that this team has played, for those questions about man coverage, they don't take sacks ever. This is the lowest sacked, the fewest sacks allowed in the NFL this season. The lowest adjusted sack rate, just 4% of their dropbacks that don't result in a throwaway or a penalty end in a sack. That's a crazy low number. All of the win rate metrics and Pro Football Focus number metrics are good for this offensive line. The interior in particular. Elton Jenkins is 3rd in pass block grade. Josh Myers is 6th in pass block grade. Sean Ryan is 29th in pass block grade. But we're talking about he's the 2nd guard, 26th, out of 59 qualifying guards. He's still right at about average as a pass protector. You'll take that. If he's the weak link on the interior, you will take that. So this offensive line, we wondered about that right guard spot. Sean Ryan has been a solid player this season. Elton Jenkins has returned to form. Josh Myers, who has not been good the last 2 years, has taken a step forward. That's the kind of incremental improvement that you need if you're a team like the Packers, because you didn't make a lot of additions there. You needed your players to get better, and your players did. Now on defense, they added bodies. How much does it matter? What did they do? How can they tighten this up a little bit? We'll talk about that next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats that you might not have the time or the resources to hire. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if they win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place bets on the NFL, all in one place. You got your futures bets. You got your same game parlays. You've got all the good stuff right in the app, plus the stats. You can keep track of what's happening. You don't have to open any of those other scoreboard apps. You can just go in and you see what's happening right in your phone, all the stats, all the good stuff. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you hit that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. What's crazy is when we went through this offseason, we looked at every place where you're having issues if you're Green Bay. You go, okay, things were pretty good. Defensive front. You got Jair Alexander, but, Keyshawn Nixon, not the greatest. The DVOA numbers, by the way, love Keyshawn Nixon this season. The safeties are a black hole. Your linebackers are a disaster. Well, the safeties are the best or second best group in the NFL right now by Pro Football Focus grading. 2 of the top 4 safeties in the NFL playing Green Bay, Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney. So that's really great. Xavier McKinney is one of the, probably top 5, top 8 leading contenders for Defensive Player of the Year. I think if maybe they had beaten the Lions, he would be a little bit higher. I know that seems lame, but they didn't, they give up 24. They really only gave up 17. The defense, I told you, I think played really well in that game, but there's going to be a perception problem there. But the linebackers, Eric Wilson and Edgerrin Cooper, have actually been pretty good for this team. Among qualifying linebackers, Eric Wilson is 13th in defense grade by Pro Football Focus. Edgerrin Cooper is 26th. There are 86 qualifying linebackers by playing time. Okay. So Eric Wilson, Edgerrin Cooper, comfortably in the top quartile. Quay Walker is 79th. If I'm in that room with Jeff Hafley, I'm going, this has got to be over. This has got to be over with Quay Walker. It just has to be. I know you want him to wear the green dot. I know you don't love Eric Wilson as a true Mike linebacker. There are issues there. He's the better. The 2 best linebackers on this team right now are Wilson and Cooper. Those guys have to play. Now they've fixed the safety position. That's done. If those guys are healthy, it's again the best or second best duo in the league. It is an elite unit. And yes, I expect Evan Williams, not just because he's coming on the show, to continue to play at a very, very high level. He's so smart. He's so instinctive. This was the guy we saw in training camp, and it immediately translated onto the field. I have no reason to believe this is at all fluky. This is just who he's been since he walked into the NFL. Javon Bullard in the slot has been one of the best run defending, overhang defenders, defensive backs in the league this season. And Keyshawn Nixon has been more than passable as an outside corner. He's been fine. Like, do I have questions about what Eric Stokes and Carrington Valentine are giving this team? Yes, but when they're healthy, that doesn't matter because they're playing dime corner and that's about it. And how many teams have dime corners that they feel great about? The answer is not that many. So I think from that standpoint, they're in good shape. What's weird is the biggest problem with this team right now is the defensive front, where we felt like they were at their best. Rashawn Gary is 29th in pass rush win rate, 10th in run stop win rate. But the rest of this front, they do not have a defensive tackle with an above average pressure rate, according to Next Gen Stats. They don't have one. Not Carl Brooks, not Devontae Wyatt, not Kenny Clark. Now they have, between that group, a nice number of pressures, raw numbers, but the rate is bad. Overall, this has just not been a defensive front, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, likely, that we thought they would be better. Now, that being said, this is a defense that is 13th by DVOA, 12th against the pass, and 15th against the run. A legitimately above average, let's say, defense overall. Sort of. Because they're 8th in EPA per play, but 28th in success rate defensively. And most of that success rate issue comes in the passing game. Now, we've talked about how I believe part of that is by design. It is, if you're going to do the Jared Goff thing and you're going to throw underneath all game, then you better be perfect. You better not let us create negative plays, and you better score when you get in the red zone. Now, that tact only allowed the Lions to score 27 points. Lions fans are going, oh! That's how they sound to me right now. We could have scored on that last drive off an onside kick. Congratulations, you got the ball at the 35-yard line, and you got down and you moved the ball 20 yards with 2 minutes left when the Packers are selling out to stop the run. Congratulations. It was the first time they'd been in Packers territory since the first drive of the second half. So it seems a little foolish to me to pump your chest about that. But I do think in a world where you play a team like the Lions, who, yes, you're worried about the big play. Jameson Williams didn't play in that game on Sunday, but you're worried about the big explosive plays that they can create. Make Jared Goff throw it underneath a bunch. He got lauded for going 12 of 12 to start the game. It was like every pass was a 5-yard pass. Give me a freaking break. This is how this defense is designed. Even as a primary single high group, they want you to have to go 10, 12, 15 plays. Now, every once in a while, you're going to break a big one. You're going to get out of a run fit, and you're going to break an explosive run. But that's not been the case defensively. They're 10th in EPA per rush, in part because they can create negative plays, but they're 19th in rush success rate. So they're below average, but barely. They're 10th in EPA per dropback, but 31st in dropback success rate. 31st. That's bad. That's bad. Only the Cardinals are worse. I don't know how you remedy that. I think there's some tackling issues. They've been one of the most inconsistent tackling teams in the NFL. I think Quay Walker not playing helps you fix that. I think finding more opportunities to play nickel, where you have Evan Williams and Javon Bullard on the field in and around the line of scrimmage, is going to help that. And so Evan Williams getting healthy will help that. They weren't playing their best defensive backs for the first month of the season. It took them some time to figure out what that looks like. And now that they have, I think there is a lot more out there for this group. Now, the pressure stuff, I don't know how that's going to get fixed. They're 17th in adjusted sack rate. They're 29th in pass rush win rate. They've been one of the worst pass rushes in the league. We found out, Preston Smith wanted to be traded. He wasn't producing anyway. I think these guys are still adjusting to the aim points, the angles, the games, all the stuff that they want to do. They're still adjusting to. The back end has adjusted far, far faster than the front end. But I believe Rashawn Gary is not a bad football player, didn't suddenly become a bad football player. He's not Nick Bosa. He's not Myles Garrett, and that's okay. But he is a much better player than he has shown, a much more productive player than he has shown. Kenny Clark, the same thing. And they'll be the first to tell you that there has been an adjustment with this defense. I think by the end of the year, guys that we know are good will look like guys that we know are good. And so for this team, I mentioned it's 4 degrees. 4 degrees. I think one personnel move. I think Quay Walker on the bench. I told you I thought he was going to be benched by Halloween. If it were me, he would have been. And then it's leaning into your best players. I think that helps you catch a rhythm. The offense has been about as good as expected given the injuries, especially at the quarterback position. And once you get healthy, you can be so much better. And then the defense, they're not going to create turnovers at the same rate that they have all season. But I think the success rate numbers, frankly, are going to get better for them as this pass rush gets a little bit better, and as you lean into your best tacklers, your best, most instinctive players being on the field more regularly. I think that will also help your success rate just generally. All right, back next week, more as we get you set for Packers Bears. Yes, the rivalry continues. So follow me on all the social medias, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts. Over on our YouTube page, we'll be live after the Bears game. No live this week, but live next week after the Bears game. So you can stay Locked On Packers.